Γεια σας και καλώς ήρθατε στο euronews. Τον Ιανουάριο καταργήθηκαν για τους πολίτες του Κοσόβου οι ταξιδιωτικές θεωρήσεις για ταξίδια στις χώρες της ζώνης Σέγγεν, κάτι που έγινε δεκτό με μεγάλο ενθουσιασμό στη χώρα. Το Κόσοβο επιθυμεί διακαώς την ένταξη στην Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση με φόντο τις δύσκολες σχέσεις που συνεχίζει να έχει με τη Σερβία. Για την ευρωπαϊκή φιλοδοξία της χώρας αλλά και για τα εμπόδια που υπάρχουν, συζητούμε με τον Μπέσνικ Μπισλίμι, αναπληρωτή πρωθυπουργό του Κοσόβου, για την ευρωπαϊκή ενσωμάτωση, την ανάπτυξη και τον διάλογο. Mr. Μπισλίμι, thank you very much for accepting our invitation. Your country submitted a request to enter the European Union in December 2022. According to the latest report from the European Commission, there is a strong commitment from the government to the European path. Which are the changes that are you making in order to be able to obtain the acquis? Is there any progress made?
Well, there is still no progress with our application because we need to pass an additional hurdle, which is the decision by the Council to mandate the Commission for handing over a questionnaire. But still, this is not preventing Kosovo to do its part of assignment in further aligning our policies and reforms with the standards of the EU. So pretty much our goal is to be closer and closer whenever that moment comes. And we hope really that this moment will come sooner because there is an awareness of the relevance, strategic relevance of accelerated integration of the region. And there can be no accelerated integration of part of the region. Either all of the Western Balkan 6 will make it or we will all lag behind. Yes.
You have said that the rest of the Western Balkans are running a sprint for the European accession, but Kosovo is running a sprint with hurdles, and that you have more obstacles outside Kosovo than inside Kosovo. Could you explain?
Well, our domestic hurdles are pretty much similar to the hurdles that are faced by other regional neighbors. For example, those hurdles that are a result of the limited capacities of the public administration, absorbing capacities, maybe inadequate infrastructure and others. And this is completely under our control, and it will be affected by the capacities of the government to reform the institutions. However, compared to other countries, we have also some additional hurdles, which makes it more difficult for us in this race that is supposed to be equal. We are the only country that still doesn't have the candidate status. We still are struggling with the recognition from 5 members of the EU, and we are still inside the dialogue process where we have little control of the outcome of this process. That's why a country that pretty much needs to do the most in terms of convergence is also asked to do more in terms of the steps at the same time having lower capacities than the rest.
But do you think there is enough political support, consensus, I should say, in your country for the reforms that need to be made for the accession?
Well, there are many areas where there is a difference in the views between governing party and the opposition, but there is one common area where we have full alignment, and this is the EU integration process. And this is fully in line also with the declared priority of the citizens. There is no other process that enjoys more support in the public polls than EU integration. We stand at 94% support, which is pretty much an indication of the strength of our interest to join EU faster and faster. That's why we believe that there are no barriers inside my country on the EU integration process, and we have to see how we can reflect this with similar support from the EU side, because it's a process where both sides have to deliver.
The biggest problem in your bilateral relations is, of course, Serbia. The European Union has repeatedly asked your country and Serbia to ease the relationship between us, between you. You are both countries that aspire to enter the European Union, and you signed an agreement, the Ohrid Agreement. How is the implementation of this agreement going?
Well, we both, as you mentioned clearly, we both want to join EU as 2 countries. For us, this is clear. And this is the signal that we also want to send to our neighbors in the north, that we have to enter EU as 2 countries. A precondition for this is the mutual recognition. A small correction, we have not signed an Ohrid agreement, so there was a verbal adoption of the agreement, but from the EU side. Immediately after the Ohrid meeting back in March 18th, there was a statement by the Serbian president where he said that he was very careful in choosing the words. He did not approve, he did not sign, he did not accept anything. After several verbal interpretation of the Ohrid meeting, then Serbia followed with a letter sent to the EU back in December 2023, when they clearly noted that for Serbia there is no agreement between Kosovo and Serbia, that they will not respect the territorial integrity of Kosovo, which pretty much is an open invitation for a conflict, that they will never follow neither a de jure nor de facto recognition of Kosovo, that they will never agree on Kosovo's membership in UN or any UN-related agencies, which pretty much is an open written statement that Serbia will not implement the basic agreement from February 27th.
So, from what I understand, you see this as the basic challenge to your European path.
Well, the basic challenge for us will be to make sure that our institutional reforms prepare the country with the standards that EU wants. But these are additional hurdles that make it more difficult for us to be able to show to the EU that we are ready for this next step, because we believe that there is a disproportionate focus on these other areas. For example, 90% of the focus maybe of the EU institutions is on the success of the dialogue. However, for us, the EU integration is more about the quality of life, the quality of environment, the capacities of public administration and other elements which unfairly are left in the margins.
Right now, there is a geostrategical window, we could say, for the accession of the Western Balkan countries because of the Russian invasion in Ukraine. Do you think that there is, which do you think could be the danger if the momentum right now is lost? And do you fear that, because the European Union is focusing right now a lot in Moldova, in Ukraine, that this would mean that maybe the rest of the countries could be neglected?
Well, it will be then contradiction to the concept of the geostrategical relevance, because the focus of EU and Moldova, Georgia and Ukraine pretty much sends the right message of the geostrategical relevance. What was the response of EU was to first focus more on security aspects, which means even countries far away from Ukraine like Finland and Sweden were accepted in NATO, and for the countries on this belt between EU and Russia, they opened the EU perspective. So it means on one side you strengthen security, on the other side you open the perspective, and third you guarantee unity in action. So because of this geostrategical relevance, every country was asked to subordinate national interest to the key international community interest in this case. So it will be contradictory then to say, okay, this was the response to the Russian invasion to Ukraine, but we will ignore the signals that come from the Western Balkans, because this will mean that we are not able to learn from the mistakes of the past. The immense financial support that is given to Ukraine to win the war tells us pretty much that a reaction is always more expensive than action. So the lesson learned from the Western Balkans will be to act and not react, and to make sure that in this action we have unity and we treat all countries equally fairly.
And do you think that 2030 is realistic for the enlargement with the Western Balkans and Kosovo included?
Well, it's difficult to answer. It's good that we have a target. It will be very also positive to accompany this target with clear timetables of what every country needs to do jointly with the EU so that this target becomes a reality. And we have to make sure to adjust this target also with the moving standards of the EU, because EU is not a static community, it's a very vibrant, where the conditions changes, and this changing condition is followed by also amendments of the acquis. And we have to make sure that gradually also our administration is upgraded so that we can be able to navigate in this moving target for the convergence. It is very important that this target is not put there just to send signals, but is put there to achieve outcome. Because if 2030 finds us without any of the countries, or maybe even one, joining the EU, this might backfire, because the signal will be that either we are not capable of setting standards and deadlines, or that we are not able to commit to the standards that we have set, or targets that we have set for ourselves. It cannot be that missing the target, for example, for one country is the failure of that country. It will be a joint failure of both sides.
Thank you very much for this discussion.
Thank you very much for having me here.